Hi again. I hope that's better. Um, can you hear me? So, picking up again, for those who are just signing on now, it's Naomi Wolf with Daily Cloud, and I'm talking about 5G. So, 5G is not in the future, it's being rolled out right now in 30 cities around the country, and their aim is 117 markets. 5G will do some things that everybody thinks is cool. It'll allow you to have instant downloading of your movies. Anything can talk to anything that can talk electronically instantaneously. It'll enable VR with new speeds. It'll enable, as I mentioned, the Internet of Things, very effectively smart homes, and of course, the tech elites have put in a big push for smart cities. The UN has also made a big push for smart cities by 2030. So smart cities, I didn't know what that meant. It's a completely digitally interconnected city where everything talks to everything. All right. So this sounds like fun. It sounds cool. Can you hear me? But there are some incredibly important things you need to know about 5G. It is not coming soon. It's live in cities like New York, LA, and Sacramento. Well, I really want you to pay attention to that because I live in New York, and as you know, those of you who follow my Twitter feed and follow Daily Cloud know, ever since November, I've been noticing some weird things happening in the clouds, and also been noticing some strange group consciousness in Manhattan. People are cranky in Manhattan, but since November of last year, I've been noticing that there will be like a wave of irritability and stress coming over the city all at once. And I've also been noticing, and I've seen it with my own eyes, I'm just going to be honest, that sometimes the clouds, we've talked about other cloud anomalies, will have like vibrational ripples or almost energy type ripples going through them that I've never seen before in my life. And they're very, very anomalous looking. I pay attention to my surroundings. I'm a writer. I'm trained to notice. These are not the clouds of any time before the last really 6 months. So, and I vividly remember standing outside and just glancing up at one of these flat cloud formations that are also quite new, and noticing it just like a ripple went through it, like visibly. It had been completely still, and a visible ripple went through it, like someone had pressed a key in a piano, and it just vibrated through this energy field. There's literally no other way to describe it. So I also noticed that on the days where there were these pixelated almost cloud formations, and people keep sending me photographs of them on Twitter, they're happening all over the country, people suddenly became incredibly stressed and tense and irritable, like this almost like bipolar type overwhelming irritability. Not just, it's not just like I'm pretty calm, but people around me would suddenly become almost unable to manage their irritability. Well, when I started looking into 5G, as you all asked me to, and Tamlin Jordan says, I see these ripple clouds here in Oklahoma City regularly. You, Tamlin. Joseph Valentine says, Naomi, I'm so glad you're talking about this. David Hickey says, you're coming in very well, good. And thank you, Negan Erfani. Dr. Jack Cruz goes into a great detail on the consequences of 5G. I used him as a source. I'll get there. Thank you. So, this wave of stress. And then I myself noticed the last few days, and when the clouds were pixelated like this, I have intense ear pressure, head pressure. I am sensitive to electromagnetic fields anyway, which my kids think is not a thing, but in Europe they know it's a thing, and they know that humans can become sensitive to electromagnetic fields if they're exposed to them too much, maybe if they have a pre-inclination. But electromagnetic fields are a real thing. This is not tinfoil hat stuff. This is real science. You might not know it's real science because you may be living in the United States, where the telecoms have done all they can to make sure you don't know how hazardous exposure to smartphones is close to your body, or how hazardous even things like microwaves can be. In Europe, it's especially on the mainland of Europe, it is common knowledge, and they don't let, for instance, children have too much exposure to smartphones. There was a case in San Francisco where locals realized that smartphones had these health hazards from electromagnetic fields, and they tried to pass a bill saying that telecoms had to post the hazards in their AT&T store, their Verizon store, and that lobby shut down that bill, right? So I'm always arguing with people and saying, don't put that near your body, because there's so many peer-reviewed studies showing the effects that these fields have on human beings and very likely the environment as well. We all know about the rashes of cancers around cell phone towers. We don't know as much as we should, again, because of the pressure on our scientific establishment from these very, very powerful industries. But going way back to the early 80s, I was always inclined to pay serious attention to the science of electromagnetic radiation affecting human beings, because way before the internet, way before the smartphone, my very first job after I graduated from college, I was given the task of editing a totally mainstream book by a totally mainstream writer with totally mainstream research about why you shouldn't sit too close to your computer, at that time giant desktops, right? Especially if you were pregnant, because of all of the studies showing the negative consequences of this radiation that was coming at you from your computer. And that was before these industries mobilized to suppress or challenge this kind of information. And I remember editing that manuscript thinking, damn, this is really serious. People really need to know that. I mean, women were having miscarriages. Pregnant women were having miscarriages from sitting in front of their computers. And, peer-reviewed studies with control groups. So obviously computers have changed since then, are probably safer. But these we're bathed in these rays all the time, and many people have become sensitive, like uncomfortable around this kind of radiation. Well, 5G means you can't get away from it, and 5G also changes the nature of these pulsations into your body, into the body of your pets, and also obviously into the environment. So what we know about 5G, and I will keep trying to educate myself to share with you, is that it's 600 megahertz. So it's a different pulsation, right? It's a different set of waves coming through the environment. And the way it'll be distributed is by small cells indoors and outside that transmit kind of radios, basically, all over the place. A smart meter is an example of a new frequency that's being put into your home that a lot of people are very uneasy with, and a lot of people say they have physical symptoms when they're around a smart meter. And so what is this going to mean for us? I mean, one thing it's going to mean is that you really, like, if you want to get away from cell towers, you can kind of get away from cell towers and you feel better, or you may think you feel better. But with 5G, these distributors of this new wave or frequency are going to be all around us. We're not always going to know where they are, how close we are, if we can get away from them, if we buy a home right next to one of these transmitters. And the other thing we don't know yet, because it's not an objective field of study, is really what the long-term dangers are. One thing I posted today, which really struck me, I mean, we all kind of know it, is a peer-reviewed study that talks about the pulsations of the brain, right? Well, this is not weirdo science. We're all vibratory matter, right? The whole universe is made of vibrations. This is not me. This is not a weirdo I've talked to on the street. This is Einstein, right? And other, great scientists. And there's a natural, healthy set of waves that the human body and brain have evolved to be part of and to participate in. And in fact, people who meditate, can alter their brain waves. This is very well established, right? The there are MRI studies of the brains of monks who are meditating. My uncle is Dan Goleman, who's done wonderful work bringing Western science to showing how you can change the brain waves in a better way by meditation and focus. But what does this mean? That there's a whole new set of frequencies coming at us that have not been studied that are able to penetrate the blood-brain barrier. So this was something I didn't know, but it doesn't surprise me because we're made of water, right? And tissue. And because we're affected by the frequencies around us. This is well established, right? Which is why when you get an X-ray, they put a sort of a lead apron on you if you're of childbearing age, right? Because you're affected by X-ray frequencies. Too much of them cause cancers. We know that, right? It's not craziness. Well, when these new frequencies are going to be all around us, and they are already in New York, it may well be that they are creating stress in the brains of the people of New York, because the brains of the people of New York are being bombarded by this new frequency that affects the brain. Some studies of electromagnetic radiation say that it does cross, and 5G, it does cross the blood-brain barrier. That's one side effect. Another is tinnitus. Many, many people are reporting suffering increasingly from tinnitus. Another side effect, and I found this out by Googling my own ear pressure, is pressure in the ears, right? And another side effect is that it boosts stressors in the body. And so it does make sense if, there's a new pulsation that can be ramped up or ramped down, and they're tinkering with it because they're establishing this infrastructure for a new technology that's currently, it's not science fiction, it's not in 2030, happening right now in New York, LA, and 30 cities, and soon 117 markets. Of course it's possible that it could be ramping up and ramping down people's brains, feeling stress, people's brains being irritable. I mean, that's what mental, like bipolar illness, God forbid, people who have bipolar illness are not like crazy. They have a poorly functioning set of electrical impulses in their brain, right? So if you tamper with that, one of the symptoms of bipolar is massive irritability. Sudden, out of the blue irritability. The brain can produce that when it's stimulated in certain ways. And now going on to clouds, this all kind of blew my mind when I realized that there are new frequencies pulsing through, not just through wires, right, in the past, not just in our homes through a modem, but out in all of the city with these multiple small cell new, radiators of these new technologies. It utterly stands to reason that it might affect cloud formation. Why would it not? Clouds are affected by energy, right? Clouds are affected by waves. I mean, one of the ways that cloud seeders work is by directing lasers at them, right? Lasers are energy. So it absolutely stands to reason that if you've got these waves pulsing out in a new way, they might be affecting cloud cover. So that's what I've got. I'm concerned about it for sure. I mean, people in Europe are writing in saying their clouds are changing, that 5G is rolling out, their skies are changing, and that people around them also react with dramatic mood changes when these sensors are around them, when these radio frequencies are around them. We know it's real science. We know there are health hazards that people are finding from microwaves that weren't disclosed. These waves have effect on us. So I'm sharing that because it's making the environment too acidic, says Liz Cosmo. I'd love more information about that. And I know Colin Richards says, if only we could be content with picking berries while hanging out on a beach. Who are these people inventing all of this shit? I wonder. Well, it's a pretty straightforward answer. They're AT&T and Verizon, and your elected officials are abetting them without public consent. Joseph Valentine says, I'd like to recommend the work and research of people like Matt Landman and Ilana Freeland. Her name has come up a lot. Thank you, Joseph. So that is 15 minutes of my, I hope, more report than rant on 5G. I do want to end on kind of a hopeful note, because I'm just so concerned about this, because to me it takes away the basic thing we need in a democracy, which is freedom of choice. If you want a smart meter, get a smart meter. If you want an Internet of Things in your home, wire your home or turn on all those electromagnetic frequencies in your home. But I don't want them in my home, and I don't want them outside when I haven't chosen to be bathed with them. I feel, and this is me editorializing, that this 5G rollout, with all its health hazards and grossly understudied long-term environmental effects, especially on children's brains, which are even more easy to affect by the environment than adult brains, right? I feel that this, like Scopex, the Harvard experiment I've been reporting on, in which Harvard is spraying Arizonans with an unnamed substance at a tropospheric level, possibly alumina, right? And millions in the process. I feel that these are experimenting on us as human subjects, and we haven't consented. I haven't consented. In medical ethics, you require informed consent from your subject before you can experiment on them. And informed consent means I get a paper that discloses thoroughly what the risks are, and that I understand what the risks are, and that I've consented. Well, AT&T and Verizon, I do not consent to being experimented on in New York City with technology that has not been proven to be safe and that might alter my environment and even my state of mind or stress levels. I do not consent to that. And the people of Arizona have not been informed about the long-term effects or short-term effects of Scopex, of what is going to happen to them if they are sprayed with alumina by Harvard, which owns the patent and is making millions from it. They have not been informed. They cannot consent. So these are illegal experiments according to U.S. law. It is illegal to experiment on people without their consent. And Gabrielle Prindle says exactly, I do not consent. So I'll wrap it up for today by saying, and thank you all, because I read these things and I get so troubled and I feel overwhelmed. And I think, how can we ever get back our beautiful planet and just live in peace on it? And sharing these things with you and then taking action is really the only thing I know that helps. So ending on a happy note, there are groups that are creating legislation, so many hearts, to stop 5G from coming into their communities. Sebastopol, for instance, in California, has initiated that kind of legislative push. And what I want to ask is if people who know about such legislation would send it to me, Naomi@dailycloud.io. I'll post it on Daily Cloud, and what you can do is just download that bill, and you can just, most people don't know this, you could just change the wording of that bill to have it suit your community. You don't have to be the Koch brothers. You don't have to be an elected official to propose legislation, to create legislation. You change the wording of that bill so that it suits your community, and then you get 50 of your neighbors who are also worried, who vote in congressional elections, and then you ask for a meeting with your state representative or even your city council representative, right? Start small, but you have a big impact if you have the legislation and you can show from getting your neighbors to sign up if they vote, right? Sign a petition, say, I care about this, and I'll get the word out in your next election. You always have to say that. You have to play politics, right? But you have a lot of power when you do that. And share your progress with me on Daily Cloud, share your successes, and I can't say let's stop this thing because I'm supposed to be nonpartisan. I can say as a citizen, it scares me to death. I don't want it in New York. I literally would leave New York if we can't moderate at least or influence how this is rolling out. I don't want to live around it. And many of you may feel the same way. So Let's acclimate our elected officials to knowing they have to talk to us and get our consent before they roll out huge, lucrative technologies that could harm us and our loved ones. Thank you so much. Please, please go to YouTube, subscribe to the Daily Clout YouTube channel. When we reach 10,000 subscribers, we get to be self-supporting and not worry about investment or donations. Please, please go to Daily Clout and become a member. It's only $3.99 a month. It helps us not ever have corporate ownership or ever be compromised by any advertising pressures. And please, please do all you can to like, share, comment, and bring me your bills. Thank you so much. It's Naomi Wolf. Bye-bye.